Get her out. She's not a customer. She's probably casing the place. That's what the sales manager at Elite Motors said, out loud, about a black woman standing quietly in front of a $500,000 Rolls-Royce Phantom. No one asked her name. No one checked her credentials. They just saw her skin, her jeans, her sneakers, and decided she didn't belong. What they didn't realize was that in less than 10 minutes, that very woman would fire every single one of them and expose a pattern of racial bias that had quietly poisoned this luxury dealership. But before we get into that, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching this from? Drop your city or country in the comments. We love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you believe in justice, accountability, and real leadership, hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. It helps this message reach more people who need to see it. Now let me take you inside Elite Motors, a newly opened Rolls-Royce dealership at 1500 Collins Avenue in Miami Beach. It's 1 p.m. on a hot July afternoon. Sunlight bounces off the polished marble floor and gleams across the hoods of luxury vehicles. The Phantom, the Cullinan, all shining like jewelry under showroom lights. A woman walks in alone. Lauren Mitchell, 42, black, CEO of Elite Automotive Group, the billion-dollar company that owns this very dealership. But today, she's undercover. No assistant, no security, no PR team, just a plain white blouse, fitted jeans, white sneakers, and her phone in her pocket. She's here because of complaints, dozens of them, about discrimination, some subtle, some outright cruel. Black and brown customers ignored, spoken down to, assumed to be broke. Lauren wanted to see for herself. She heads toward the Phantom, sleek and imposing in obsidian black. She pauses, hand gently touching the polished hood, when she's approached not by a smile, but by silence. Jessica Lee, a 29-year-old salesperson in designer heels and a tight beige blazer, glances up and immediately turns away. Lauren gives it a moment, then calmly asks, "Excuse me, could I get some details on this model?" Jessica's reply is flat. "You'll need to wait." She doesn't move, doesn't look back. Instead, she turns to greet two white customers in Gucci sunglasses and linen suits who just walked in. "Welcome. Let me show you something you'll love." She beams, a sharp contrast, just 10 feet away. Lauren stands invisible. That's when Richard Hayes, 48, the sales manager, walks up, loud, sharp-suited, and clearly irritated. "Ma'am, we can't have people loitering near these vehicles," he says, voice dripping with assumption. "If you're not here to make a serious purchase, I'll have to ask you to leave." Lauren stays composed. "I'm asking about the Phantom." "That's a $500,000 car," he snaps. "Let's not waste anyone's time." Behind him, another salesperson, Ethan Carter, 32, white, smug, and all too comfortable, chimes in from his desk. "She looks like she Ubered here, probably just wants a TikTok pic." Richard chuckles and adds, "She's dressed like she's returning something to Walmart." The words hang in the air like acid, but before Lauren can speak, a younger woman breaks the tension. Aisha Khan, 23, a new trainee, steps forward nervously. "Hi, ma'am. I'd be happy to help." "Step back," Richard snaps. "You're new. You don't know how to spot real buyers yet." Aisha hesitates, glances at Lauren, then quietly steps away. In the far corner of the showroom, another customer, Mark Sullivan, a 30-year-old white tech entrepreneur in a faded polo, has been watching. He lifts his phone, hits record, and mutters, "This is exactly the crap people deny exists." In seconds, he posts the video to X with a simple caption, "Racism at Elite Motors, no hashtags, just raw footage." Around the showroom, murmurs begin. A couple of guests glance over. One older woman whispers, "She's being treated like trash." Lauren stands a little straighter. "I'd still like to hear about the Phantom," she says calmly. Jessica walks past her and laughs under her breath. Try the brochure rack, Ethan adds, or CarMax. That's when Lauren reaches for her phone. She calls Tanya Brooks, her assistant. Tanya, activate the internal system. I need everything logged from this moment. Tanya's voice crackles through. Already recording. Corporate is on standby. Lauren nods slowly. She turns back to Richard. I'm giving you one more opportunity to do your job. Lady, he smirks. Come back when you've got a real bank account and better shoes. Just then, Mark speaks up. You're being recorded. It's already online. People are watching. Richard shrugs. Let them watch. Lauren, steady as ever, pulls out a black leather wallet and slides out a slim, metal ID. It reads, Lauren Mitchell, CEO, Elite Automotive Group. She holds it in front of Richard. He laughs. Nice prop. Jessica squints. Wait, is that real? Ethan leans over. She's playing pretend. Probably printed that at home. Lauren tucks the badge away. In 10 minutes, she says. None of you will be working here. Mark's eyes go wide. Customers begin filming again. Aisha steps beside Lauren and whispers, I believe you. Richard rolls his eyes. Security's gonna love this. But security never comes. What does come, instead, is justice, swift, sharp, and carried out by the woman they tried to humiliate. You think you can afford a Cullinan? Ethan Carter sneered, standing just a few feet away from Lauren, pointing subtly but mockingly toward the gleaming black SUV behind her. That thing starts at 400 grand. This ain't a window shopping mall. Lady? The sarcasm in his voice wasn't just rude, it was dehumanizing. Jessica Lee folded her arms and joined in, glancing Lauren up and down. Let's stop pretending, she said sharply. She's clearly not buying anything. She's just taking up space. Then, louder, for the entire showroom to hear, Can someone open the door? She's lost. The words cut through the luxury air like a slap. A couple customers chuckled, but most turned silent. Some lowered their heads, others watched with growing discomfort. Aisha Khan, standing behind the reception desk, looked like she wanted to crawl out of her skin. Her hand trembled slightly as she placed a folder back onto the counter. She's not lost, Aisha said firmly, her voice barely raised but unmistakably clear. She asked about the Cullinan. That makes her a customer. Richard Hayes, standing near the center of the room, turned on her like a switchblade. You're 3 weeks in. You don't get to decide who's serious and who's not. Lauren looked straight at him. And what makes someone serious? Mr. Hayes? Their skin tone? Their outfit? Richard laughed out loud. No, their bank account, Ethan chimed in again. Louder now. We got actual buyers walking in, and you're wasting time with someone who probably financed her phone. Just then, Emma Wright and Daniel Evans, the white VIP couple in designer clothes, were being handed flutes of complimentary champagne by another staffer, all smiles and small talk. See the difference? Jessica added smugly. Real buyers, not drama starters. In the far corner, Mark Sullivan, still filming quietly, spoke into his phone. Just posted to Reddit. This isn't customer service. This is profiling, plain and simple. He turned the camera back toward Lauren. She's just asking about a car and they're treating her like a trespasser. Lauren's phone buzzed. Tanya Brooks, her assistant, was on the line. Everything's recorded and time-stamped, Tanya said. We've activated full escalation protocol. Good, Lauren replied calmly. Keep it rolling. Then she turned to Ethan. What's the exact starting price on this Cullinan? Ethan smirked. Doesn't matter. You're not going to drive it. You're not even going to touch it. Aisha stepped forward again, louder this time, and firmer. That's not your decision to make. Richard narrowed his eyes at her. Careful, Aisha. You're going to talk yourself right out of a future here. But Aisha stood her ground. I've seen you ignore 5 complaints in the last 3 weeks, she said, voice shaking but steady. And I remember 2 of those came from customers who looked just like her. The air went still. Richard's jaw clenched. Jessica glanced down. Ethan's confidence wavered. For a moment, it felt like the whole showroom had stopped breathing. Mark's camera panned to Aisha, catching the tension live. So now we've got a trainee standing up for a customer, he whispered to his viewers. This is getting real. Lauren's eyes met Aisha's, a silent moment of gratitude passing between them. Mr. Hayes, Lauren said slowly. This dealership has a history of complaints. I wanted to believe it was exaggerated. But here I am, watching it unfold firsthand. Ma'am, Richard interrupted, raising his voice to reassert control. I'm going to ask you one final time to leave the property, or we'll have you escorted out. Is that right? Lauren replied, lifting one eyebrow. That's what you do when someone challenges your bias? We don't tolerate disruption, Jessica added, walking quickly toward the front desk. This is your last warning. Then use it wisely, Lauren said coldly, because the next voice you hear may not be so kind. At that moment, Mark turned his phone toward his face again. She's calm. They're the ones acting out, and they're not even hiding it. An older black gentleman in a light gray shirt stepped forward from the crowd. This ain't right, he said quietly. She got every right to be here. She asking questions. They acting like she broke in. Lauren nodded toward him. Thank you, sir. Then she turned her full attention back to Richard. So let me ask again, officially, is the Rolls-Royce Cullinan still available? Jessica stammered. Yes, but... No buts. Lauren cut in. I want the full specs. Now. Ethan scoffed and said, Still playing CEO, huh? That line stopped Lauren cold. Her eyes didn't blink. She didn't speak right away. Instead, she let her mind drift. Just briefly. Back to a dealership in Tampa. 20 years earlier. She had been 22, fresh out of college, walked into a showroom wearing a borrowed blouse and thrift store heels, ready to ask about a used Mercedes. A salesman glanced at her, chuckled, and said, Sweetheart, these cars aren't for you. That moment burned into her. It was the exact day she decided to stop asking for seats at someone else's table and start building her own. You know, Lauren said now, voice low but firm. I've heard that line before, years ago. Same arrogance, same tone. She glanced around the room. But back then, I didn't have the power to do anything about it. Today, I do. Then she held up her phone. Tanya, escalate this. I want regional oversight alerted immediately. Tanya responded without pause. Already in motion. Director Paul is en route. Excellent, Lauren replied. Then she looked back at the staff before her. You have about 5 minutes left to fix your tone, or pack your things. Mark lowered his phone and addressed his viewers. If you're watching this, drop a comment below. What would you say to this woman if you were standing here right now? What would you do if this was your daughter or sister getting treated this way? Then he looked up at Lauren again, his tone quieter now. You're not alone. The crowd grew still again. Phones kept rolling, and beneath the marble floors and luxury branding, something far deeper was cracking, an entire culture built on assumption and silence. Lauren stood calm in the eye of the storm, and the storm was far from over. I'm Lauren Mitchell, she said plainly, standing at the center of the Elite Motors showroom, her voice calm but echoing with finality. I'm the CEO of Elite Automotive Group. This dealership, I own it. For a beat, the room went still. A few customers stopped in their tracks. Aisha's eyes widened with silent hope. Mark Sullivan lowered his phone just enough to hear the silence wrap around the room like a cold wind. Then, laughter. Not from the crowd, but from Richard Hayes, whose smug disbelief broke the air like shattering glass. "You?" he scoffed. "You're the CEO? Please, don't insult us." He motioned around the showroom like he was trying to rally a chorus. "Folks, come on. Does she look like a CEO to you?" Ethan followed with a cruel grin. "This is getting sad now. She's still in character. Someone call central casting." Jessica snorted, then turned to the front desk where a small microphone sat for internal announcements. "Let's clear up the fantasy," she muttered, flicking the switch. Her voice rang out through the entire dealership PA system. "Attention staff, we have a situation at the front. Someone is impersonating corporate leadership. Please disregard." Lauren didn't move. She didn't shout, but the flicker of emotion in her eyes, hurt, disappointment, resolve, was unmistakable. Around her, some customers gasped. A couple people muttered under their breath. The older black gentleman who had spoken up earlier shook his head. "That's too far," he said softly. Mark looked around, watching the shift. "She said she's the CEO," he called out. "Why don't you just verify it instead of humiliating her over a loudspeaker?" Jessica turned, defensive. "It's obvious she's not. Why waste time?" Lauren didn't even blink. "You could have asked for ID. You could have called corporate. Instead, you tried to humiliate me publicly. That tells me everything I need to know." Richard stepped forward again, still trying to assert control. "This is a high-value dealership. We don't play games here. We've had scams before. People walk in off the street trying to act like they run the place." "No," Aisha interjected. "You've never had anyone walk in off the street and actually own the place. And that's what's throwing you." Richard pointed a sharp finger in her direction. "You're a trainee. You don't speak for management." Aisha didn't flinch. "I'm speaking as a human being." Ethan now stepped toward Lauren, his voice louder, sharper. "You've got 10 seconds to leave before I call real security." Mark stepped between them. "Are you serious right now?" he said, his voice rising. "You're threatening to throw her out? What if she is the CEO?" Ethan laughed in his face. "Then we're all fired, right?" He said it like a joke, like a dare. Lauren tilted her head slightly. "Correct." It was one word, quiet, icy, and devastating, around them. Phones were still recording. Customers had stopped pretending to browse. They were forming a quiet, loose circle, watching closely, watching justice, or injustice, play out in real time. Mark turned to the crowd. "This is what discrimination looks like," he said. "Not just the words, the dismissiveness, the way they laugh when someone like her claims power. If she looked different, they would have verified, not mocked." One woman in a tan suit nodded. "It's in the tone. I've seen it before." Jessica's voice over the intercom had left a mark, but Lauren was unmoved. "Richard, Jessica, Ethan," she said, calmly naming them one by one. "In about 5 minutes, you're going to wish you'd simply listened, that you'd shown an ounce of professionalism, or humanity." Richard rolled his eyes. "Lady, you're delusional." "No," Lauren replied, eyes narrowing just slightly. "I'm just tired of people like you thinking I need to look a certain way to deserve respect." She slowly reached into her pocket and pulled out her executive identification again, sleek, black, and metallic, with the official Elite Automotive Group logo and her title etched beside her name. She held it up, not for Richard this time, but for the customers. A murmur rippled through the crowd. One man whispered, "That looks legit." Mark took a still photo of it. "Confirmed," he said to his viewers. "I just checked Elite Automotive Group's leadership site. Lauren Mitchell is the CEO. She's not lying." Jessica's face paled. Ethan's smirk began to fade. Richard's lips parted, but no words came. Then Aisha, her voice steadier than before, added, I looked her up my first day. I know that name. I remember thinking, finally, a black woman leading in this industry. Lauren looked at her with quiet gratitude. Thank you, Aisha. That means more than you know, Jessica sputtered. Well, then why didn't you announce yourself when you came in? Why hide who you are? Lauren's tone didn't rise. Because I shouldn't have to announce my worth to be treated with basic respect. That's the test. And you failed. Ethan's eyes darted toward the exit. Richard stepped back slightly, but Lauren wasn't done. Tanya, she said into her phone. Status update? Tanya replied crisply. Corporate director en route. You'll have backup in under 5 minutes. Mark looked at Richard. You still think she's pretending? The older gentleman stepped forward again, looking Richard dead in the eye. Y'all embarrassed yourselves, every last one of you. Then, turning to Lauren, he said, Thank you for coming here today, for exposing it, for showing us what leadership really looks like. The room was shifting. Customers were no longer just observers. They were participants, witnesses, advocates. And then came the twist. A woman near the back, a Latina mother in her late 30s, holding her daughter's hand, spoke up. I came here 2 weeks ago, asked about a ghost. Jessica told me it was out of my range before I even said a word. The room went quiet again. Jessica turned sharply. That's not true. It is, the woman snapped. I was humiliated in front of my child. More murmurs now. Another man chimed in. Same here. I asked about financing. Got brushed off by Richard like I was wasting air. Lauren looked at Jessica and Richard. How many others? She asked. How many customers have you lost because of what you think they look like? Jessica had no answer. Richard's shoulders slumped. The crowd was now fully gathered, no longer just curious shoppers, but a jury. Lauren looked around and let the silence breathe. Then she said, You may not believe who someone is when they walk through your door, but today, you all get to find out exactly what happens when respect is denied to the wrong person. And this time, no one laughed. Call security, Richard hissed under his breath, stepping back from Lauren like her presence was contagious. Get her out now. Ethan didn't hesitate. He pulled out his phone, walking with sharp, confident strides as if tossing someone out was second nature. No problem, he muttered. But as he reached the front desk, Lauren took one step forward and said, loud enough for the entire showroom to hear, You touch that phone, and you'll be explaining yourself to the board of directors. The air shifted. Ethan paused. For the first time since this began, a sliver of uncertainty crossed his face. Don't test me, he growled, still posturing. You're not going to hijack this place with a fake title and a sob story. Then make the call, Lauren said evenly, her voice a calm wave cutting through his aggression. Let's see who shows up first, security or my legal team. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he didn't move. Around them, the customers were no longer just watching. They were leaning in. One woman had stepped away from the ghost she was admiring and now stood with her arms crossed, face hard. A man in a black button-up whispered to his wife, This is unreal! But it wasn't until Ethan slammed his phone on the desk in frustration that the real shift began. You know what? He barked. Fine. If no one else will do it, I'll handle it myself. Then he turned and stormed back toward Lauren, finger pointed and body puffed up like a bouncer at a club. Get out! His voice was sharp, his eyes locked on Lauren's, and in one quick, impulsive motion, he reached forward, hand out as if to push her back. But before he could touch her, a hand gripped his arm. It was Mark Sullivan. Don't you lay a finger on her, Mark said, calm but firm. Ethan yanked his arm away. Don't interfere. You've already crossed the line, Mark replied. Then, turning to the crowd, he raised his phone. Everyone, I need witnesses. If this escalates further, we have proof. And like a ripple across the showroom, phones went up. 1, 2, 5, 8. A quiet sea of customers, now recording from every angle. You've got half the internet watching, someone muttered. Might want to dial it down. Ethan hesitated, his arrogance crumbling in real time. Lauren didn't move an inch. She stood still, shoulders square, gaze unwavering. Mr. Carter, she said coolly, your employment here is already under review. Whether you leave with dignity is still in your hands. Ethan opened his mouth, but no words came out. Jessica rushed to his side, grabbing his arm, whispering something, her expression pale, tight, panicked. Richard remained still, arms crossed, watching like a captain refusing to abandon his sinking ship, but even he could see the tide had turned. Just then, a voice came from the back, Aisha, stepping up once more. This ends now, she said, louder this time. You're not protecting the dealership, you're destroying it. Richard turned to her. Quiet, trainee. No, she said, finally unafraid. I won't be quiet. Not when you treat customers like garbage and think no one will speak up. Aisha turned toward the crowd. Everyone saw what happened today. This isn't about one person. It's about how they've been running this place. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. Then a tall Hispanic man stepped forward and stood beside Lauren. If she's not leaving, neither are we. A black woman in heels followed, arms folded. You want her out? You'll have to move all of us. One by one, customers began shifting, not loud, not aggressive, just positioning themselves around Lauren, forming a loose, protective barrier, a human wall of quiet defiance. Richard looked around in disbelief. What is this? Some kind of protest? No, said the man beside Lauren. It's accountability. Mark kept filming. We're live, he said, and people are watching. Ethan looked at Jessica. What do we do? I don't know, she whispered. I didn't think this would go this far. It's not done yet, Lauren said. She pulled out her phone and pressed a single contact. Tanya picked up immediately. Ready, she said. Proceed, Lauren replied. Then, without hesitation, Lauren made the second call. Paul, it's me. I need you on site. Now. A calm male voice answered. Already 10 minutes out. Sandra and David are with me. Lauren smiled faintly. Good. I'll hold the line until you arrive. Ethan backed up. Who's Paul? He whispered to Jessica. She's bluffing, right? Jessica shook her head slowly. That's Paul Nguyen. He's the director. Ethan's face drained of color. You're kidding. No. And Sandra Lee and David Patel, board members. Ethan turned toward Richard. What do we do? Richard didn't respond. He was staring at Lauren like he'd just realized who he'd insulted in front of 30 witnesses and half the internet. Mark looked up from his feed. You're trending, he said, almost to himself. Reddit's already picked it up. Aisha turned to Lauren. Do you want me to clear space for them? Lauren nodded. When they arrive, they'll need room to do what I'm about to do. Around her, customers murmured. One whispered. She's really the CEO? Another replied. She's about to prove it. Jessica stepped back. Slowly, Richard muttered. You planned this? No, Lauren said, her voice now rising just slightly. But I was ready. And that's the difference between surviving racism and dismantling it. Ethan's hands were trembling now. He looked like a man trying to rewind time, desperate to undo what he'd already said, what he'd already shown. Jessica was frozen. And Richard, his usual swagger gone. watched helplessly as Lauren turned to the crowd and spoke not just to them, but to everyone who had ever been told they didn't belong. "You don't get to humiliate people and hide behind sales quotas," she said. "You don't get to devalue others while calling it company policy. And you don't get to keep your job when you weaponize your assumptions." A woman in the back clapped once, then twice, then others joined. It wasn't raucous. It was deliberate, measured, like the beginning of something. And in the center of it all stood Lauren Mitchell, unshaken, surrounded by everyday people who had seen enough and decided that silence was no longer an option. The double glass doors at the front of the Elite Motors showroom swung open just as the tension inside hit its peak. A hush fell over the floor as three sharply dressed figures entered. Paul Nguyen, the branch director of Elite Motors, followed by board members Sandra Lee and David Patel. Their footsteps were crisp against the marble, their expressions unreadable but focused. Paul scanned the room, taking in the wall of customers now standing shoulder to shoulder behind Lauren, the frozen staff members in front of her, and the dozens of phones filming in silence. "Lauren," Paul said with a respectful nod. "We're here." "Thank you," Lauren replied, stepping forward without hesitation. "You're just in time." Sandra and David flanked Paul like corporate sentinels. "We've reviewed the internal system logs," Sandra announced clearly. "We've seen enough." Richard Hayes opened his mouth, suddenly pale. This is a misunderstanding." "It's not," Paul replied firmly. "And we're not here to debate that." Lauren turned to the entire floor, lifting her voice slightly, not angry, but clear, resolute. "Effective immediately, Richard Hayes, Jessica Lee, and Ethan Carter. You are relieved of all duties at Elite Motors. Your employment is terminated." Gasps rippled through the showroom. Ethan staggered backward like the words had knocked the air from his chest. Jessica whispered, "What? No. Wait. You're done," Lauren said again, firmer. "For conduct, for discrimination, and for dishonoring the values this company stands for. You are no longer authorized to step foot on this property. Ethan Carter. Additionally, you are banned from rehire across all Elite Automotive locations." The phones captured every word, every stunned expression. Mark Sullivan's camera didn't shake once. Customers murmured, some whispering, others clapping quietly. Richard shook his head, desperate. "You can't do this. You came in here undercover. You baited us." "I assessed how you treat people who walk through that door without privilege wrapped around them," Lauren said. "And you failed, spectacularly." Paul stepped beside her. "This action has the board's full support," he added, looking directly at Richard. "You're dismissed." Jessica's mouth opened to protest, but before she could speak, Lauren turned to Aisha. "Aisha Khan," she said, her voice softening. "You were the only one who treated me like a human being. For that, I thank you. And I'm promoting you. Effective today. You'll be working directly with regional leadership. Full-time. Benefits. Salary increase. And mentorship under my executive team." Aisha gasped, her hands trembling as she nodded. "Yes, thank you. Ma'am, I won't let you down." Lauren smiled, briefly, but then turned back to the larger crowd. "This isn't just about what happened today," she said. "This is about the culture that allowed it to happen." Customers nodded. A man near the Cullinan whispered, "Finally." But then, just as the tension was starting to shift, Jessica did something no one expected. She stepped forward, hands raised, voice cracking. "Wait," she said. "There's something I need to say." Lauren tilted her head. "Go ahead." Jessica swallowed hard. "It wasn't just today. It's been going on for months, maybe longer. Richard told us not to waste time on certain people if they looked like they couldn't afford a car, especially, you know." Her voice faltered. "He said to smile, but keep them moving. Paul's jaw tensed. Sandra's eyes darkened. Are you saying this was instructed? David asked. Yes, Jessica said, almost whispering now. And I went along with it. We all did. Because he controlled the schedule, the commissions. He even tore up a complaint form once. The crowd erupted with murmurs. Phones captured every word. Lauren's expression didn't change. And what about you, Jessica? She asked. Why didn't you speak up before now? Jessica looked down. I didn't want to lose my job. But I did lose something, my conscience. And after what I did to you today, I couldn't stay silent. Lauren nodded slowly. Thank you for your honesty. But it's still too late to undo what's been done. Jessica nodded, eyes welling. I know. Ethan looked furious. You're just trying to save yourself, he snapped. Don't pin this on me. You were the worst one, Jessica shouted, suddenly sobbing. You laughed at every person you thought didn't belong here. You told me to call security on that mom with her kid. You made me feel like treating people badly was just part of the job. Ethan's face went beet red. That's a lie. It's the truth, said another voice from the crowd. A woman who had been silent until now stepped forward. She told me I couldn't test drive because I looked too urban. That was 2 months ago. Paul turned to Tanya, still on speaker from Lauren's phone. Document everything, he said. We'll be initiating a full review of past complaints, effective immediately. Already logging, Tanya replied. Lauren looked around at the room again. The same luxury showroom that once tried to erase her now stood as a witness to truth, confession, and justice. This is how we fix it, she said. Not just by firing a few people, but by changing how we hire, how we train, how we listen. Mark stepped forward, no longer filming, just watching in awe. I came here to browse, he said. Now I feel like I just witnessed history. Lauren gave him a quiet nod. Then she turned to Sandra and David. Let's start with a public statement, and full reparations for any customers affected by past discrimination, David replied. We'll support that, Sandra added. We'll issue formal apologies, too, corporate-wide. Aisha, still in shock, whispered, You just changed everything. Lauren exhaled deeply, then said to everyone present, staff, customers, strangers who had turned into allies, this isn't the end. This is the beginning of what Elite Motors is supposed to be, fair, inclusive, accountable. Customers clapped, louder now. A few teared up. Some came forward to thank her personally. And as Ethan slumped beside the desk, silent, and Richard stared off like he was watching his world collapse in slow motion, Lauren stood strong, resolute, proud, and exactly where she belonged. The aftermath of the firings didn't bring silence. It brought clarity and action. As the crowd around Lauren Mitchell settled into stunned murmurs and whispered conversations, she stepped toward the dealership's main terminal, a sleek touchscreen panel installed behind the front desk, linked directly to Elite Automotive Group's internal operations system. Tanya, she said into her phone, now resting on speaker beside the keyboard. Prepare to lock all employee access codes for Richard Hayes, Jessica Lee, and Ethan Carter, effective immediately. Tanya's voice came through with calm precision. Understood. Executing now. Lauren typed in her executive credentials, and within seconds, the staff's credentials were disabled. Door entry, system logins, payroll access, wiped out with 3 decisive clicks. Customers who had remained inside for the spectacle applauded softly, not out of celebration, but out of respect. We don't just remove a problem, Lauren said as she looked up. We repair what it damaged. Aisha Khan stood at the side, still visibly stunned by her promotion moments earlier. Lauren motioned her over. You're now officially reporting to Paul Nguyen, she said warmly. And you'll be part of our National Customer Experience Training Task Force. Aisha covered her mouth for a moment, then nodded tearfully. Thank you. I'm ready. Lauren smiled, placing a hand on her shoulder. You've already proven that. Then, turning to the entire showroom, Lauren addressed both the customers and the remaining staff members still gathered at a respectful distance. Starting today, Elite Motors will undergo a top-to-bottom review of every policy, every complaint, and every recorded interaction. We will rebuild trust one conversation at a time. Paul nodded beside her. That process starts now. Sandra Lee, with the measured grace of a board member who had seen enough, added, No one here should be afraid to speak up again. Not on our watch. Mark Sullivan, still standing to the side with his phone lowered, said, People are going to talk about this. Everywhere. Good, Lauren said. Let them. This time. The story is the truth. For a moment, the energy shifted into hope. But then, the twist arrived, quietly, and from an unexpected source. Richard Hayes, who had been sitting on a bench near the exit, hunched over in defeat, suddenly stood up. His eyes were glassy, his tone no longer defiant but hollow, almost remorseful. I need to say something, he said aloud. The room quieted. Lauren turned toward him, eyes steady. Go ahead. Richard swallowed hard. It wasn't just rude behavior. What we did, it was intentional. A few customers exchanged looks. Sandra narrowed her gaze. What do you mean? The complaints, he said. There were dozens. People of color, young customers, people we thought didn't fit the brand. They'd complain about being ignored, insulted, denied test drives, and I deleted most of them from the system. You what? Paul asked, his voice sharp. We kept logs, but they weren't complete. I'd changed the category from discrimination to customer attitude or budget mismatch. Sometimes I'd mark them as resolved without action. Sometimes I just erased them. Lauren's jaw clenched. And why? Richard looked down. Because if corporate ever saw the real numbers, I thought we'd all be shut down. I figured protecting the store meant protecting ourselves. By burying the truth, Lauren said, her voice quieter now, but weighted. You didn't protect the brand. You corrupted it. Jessica, still standing near the wall, nodded slowly. He told me to do it, too. And I did. I helped him. I didn't want to lose my commissions. David Patel stepped forward. How far back does this go? At least a year, Richard said. Maybe more. And you falsified data? Paul asked. Yes. The showroom fell into a heavy silence again. It was no longer just about what happened today. It was about what had been hidden for months, possibly years. Tanya, Lauren said into her phone, are you hearing this? Yes. Logging everything. I'm alerting internal audit now. Include corporate legal, Sandra added. This just became a compliance issue. Richard looked like he might collapse. I know there's no excuse, but I thought I was keeping things afloat. You were sinking us slowly, Lauren said, and you almost got away with it. Aisha stepped forward, her voice quiet but certain. I looked up to you. Day one. I thought you were what leadership looked like. Richard turned his eyes to her but said nothing. Lauren took a breath. From this moment on, no complaint will go unanswered. No customer will be dismissed for how they look, what they wear, or what someone assumes they can afford. The room stirred again. Customers nodded, some still recording, others now listening in rapt attention. We're establishing a regional diversity accountability board, Lauren continued, led by employees and customers, and Aisha will be our first voice on that council. Aisha's eyes widened. Me? Yes, Lauren said. Because you spoke up when it mattered. That's what leadership looks like, Paul added. We'll also reinstate every complaint removed in the past 2 years. Corporate will contact each affected customer with a written apology and, where appropriate, direct outreach. Mark turned to the nearest customer beside him. I've never seen anything like this. This isn't PR. This is real. Lauren looked over at him. That's because it is real. When the truth comes to light, we act, not to cover it, but to clean it. Sandra stepped forward. And we'll notify the media proactively. No spin, just transparency. Lauren nodded. Let the public see what correction looks like. The final move came like punctuation at the end of a long sentence. Lauren turned back to the staff terminal. Tanya, generate an internal report under the title Showroom Reformation, July 20th, 2024. Include today's timeline, testimony, terminated employees, and the start of policy overhaul. Report created, Tanya replied. Time-stamped and locked for audit. Distributed across all Elite Motors branches by morning, Lauren said. I want every general manager to read this. Confirmed. And just like that, what began as an ordinary visit became a policy blueprint for change. Lauren didn't just survive discrimination, she exposed it, rooted it out, and turned it into momentum. The twist wasn't only that Richard confessed, it was that he revealed just how deep the rot had gone, and how far Lauren's leadership would now reach. And standing in that gleaming showroom, with her sleeves still rolled up and her voice unwavering, Lauren Mitchell showed exactly what it meant to reform from the inside out. 3 days after the incident, the entrance of Elite Motors looked very different. The showroom had been closed to the public for internal training. The luxury cars covered. The staff replaced with interim leadership flown in from corporate. But the story hadn't faded. In fact, it had only grown louder. News outlets picked up Mark Sullivan's footage. Editorials praised Lauren Mitchell's calm authority. Customers shared personal stories of exclusion and hurt from dealerships across the country, and inside Elite Automotive Group's offices. The reform that began in Miami Beach became a full-scale movement. Lauren didn't waste time. A full investigation was launched into every complaint filed at Elite Motors over the past 2 years. Dozens had been erased. Others had been deliberately mislabeled. Outreach teams were assigned to call back affected customers, not with scripted apologies, but with real conversations. Several of them were offered direct invitations to advisory panels. A new diversity and inclusion policy was drafted in just 10 days. Aisha Khan, now part of the task force, helped review hiring procedures and onboarding scripts across all Elite dealerships nationwide. Her voice wasn't just symbolic, it was active, empowered, and informed by everything she saw that day. The story, which had started with a white shirt and a $500,000 car, became a spark that reached showrooms in Atlanta, Chicago, Houston, and beyond. But what truly solidified Lauren's legacy came quietly, through an email. It arrived at 2:37 a.m. Subject line, Confession. It was from Michael Landon, a former regional manager who had quietly resigned 6 months earlier. His message was short but explosive. I was told to look the other way. He wrote, Richard wasn't acting alone. There was an unofficial directive. Don't waste time on non-core demographics. It didn't come from you, but it came from someone who used your name to justify it. Lauren stared at the screen in silence. The very bias she had dismantled on the showroom floor hadn't just been tolerated. It had been institutionalized. And it had been done behind her back. Her name, her leadership, used to mask systemic exclusion. That final twist didn't shake her. It confirmed what she already suspected. The problem wasn't just in the showroom, it was in the shadows. And now, it was in the light. By the end of the month, 3 additional managers were suspended. Regional oversight was restructured. All dealerships received mandatory training, not optional PowerPoints, but live, guided workshops with customer role play and real accountability. The changes weren't just cosmetic, they were structural, permanent, transformational, and yet, through it all, Lauren never raised her voice. She didn't need to. She led with presence, with clarity, with the weight of experience. Because for Lauren Mitchell, this fight wasn't theoretical, it was personal. At 28, she had been laughed out of a dealership for asking about a lease. At 35, a loan officer once assumed she was applying on behalf of someone else. And at 42, she had walked into her own showroom and been called a fraud. But now she was being called something else, a catalyst, a force, a mirror held up to a broken system. Customers returned, sales recovered, but more importantly, trust began to regrow, not just at Elite Motors, but in communities that had long been pushed aside. In an emotional follow-up video posted by Mark Sullivan, Lauren sat down in the same white shirt, speaking directly to the camera. "This wasn't about revenge," she said. "It was about respect, about what happens when good people stay silent, and what happens when they don't." She thanked the customers who stood beside her, the staff who supported the reform, the voices who stepped up, even when it hurt. Then, looking straight ahead, she added, "If you've ever been told you don't belong, don't let them decide that for you. Show up anyway, and if you can't find the door, build your own." The comment section filled with thousands of replies. One simply said, "You didn't just change a dealership, you changed the game." 3 months later, a bronze plaque was quietly installed near the entrance of Elite Motors. It read, "This showroom was reformed on July 20th, 2024, through courage, truth, and leadership, in honor of those who refused to stay silent." And just beneath it, in smaller letters, "You don't fix a culture by covering it up. You fix it by standing in it. Lauren Mitchell." Legacy doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes, it comes with accountability. If this story moved you, don't just scroll, share it, talk about it. And remember, silence never changed anything, but your voice can.